Okay, board members, we're going to get going here. I want to we're on item 8. I'm going to turn the time over to Ben Rasmussen to present the hearing officer's report. Okay, let me make sure I get this turned on. There you go.
Thank you, Chair Huntsman. Ben Rasmussen, Director of Law and Professional Practices. Appreciate the opportunity to be with you this afternoon, board members. We're here to follow up on the public hearing that we held on Friday regarding Rule R277-707 and the amendments that have been proposed to the allocation formulas. As part of the rulemaking process, if there's a public hearing, the administrative rules require that we provide to the board a hearing report. So the first item that we have here, 8.1, is essentially just to provide you that hearing report, which is basically a compilation of documents that have information that is relevant to your decision-making process. It includes all the public comment, the hearing requests, list of the people that spoke at the public hearing, all that kind of thing to help you inform your decision in what to do with these rule amendments going forward. So the hearing report is presented for your consideration.
So board members, that's in our board docs, and so at this time, I'd be seeking a motion to accept the hearing officer's report on R277-707. Seeking a motion. Board member Belknap, do we have a second? Second. Discussion to the motion to the report. Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Voting is unanimous.
And if I may, Chair, with regards to the rule then, I just wanted to highlight at this point what the board's options are with the proposed amendments to the rule today. There are essentially 4 options, and those have been provided to the board on board docs. I've got those up on the screen for you to look at. The options are, I want to clarify a couple things. So if the board wants to have changes made to the rule that will go into effect for the coming school year, the 19-20 school year, the board would need to choose option 1 or 3. That's either to allow draft 4 to take effect, or to make amendments to the rule and have the policy team refile that with the Office of Administrative Rules. There are also 2 other options that the board can take if the board thinks other changes need to be made, and that would be, number 2 would be just to hold the rule as is, which would leave the rule as is without any changes, or number 4 would be to refer the rule back to committee for further review and consideration. So draft 4, I want to remind you, is the draft that was passed by the board and has been published with the DAR. We also have a draft 6 on board docs, which reflects some changes that I think Board Member Davis will propose to you and talk to you about for your consideration. And then if we may, Chair, I think Nathan Ock is going to go into some of the information that the board has to consider as well.
Okay. Hey, help me understand something really quick. On these options, I might be a little bit confused. Option 1 that you have on there, allow the rule to take effect. That's not an option, as we've already voted to approve the rule, and so there's a process that happens. Do we stop that process?
So you have voted to approve that, and there was a request for a public hearing. So we have that hasn't been filed as final with DAR yet. So you can direct staff to file that. It won't take effect unless we file that with DAR.
Yeah, but if we don't take any action, if no action happened today, draft 4 would be filed. There's the process. No.
Given the public hearing, staff wouldn't file the rule as final until the board gives us the go-ahead to do that.
Okay, thanks for that clarity. I'm still kind of new. This is year, what, 4 or 5? Okay. Okay. Board Member Cindy Davis.
Oh, I can wait till we're going to get.
Was there another comment?
So, Chair, there's a number of attachments on board docs, and I wanted to quickly go through and ensure that all the board members understood what each of those attachments are, with your permission.
Board Member Davis, I'm going to turn your mic off, and then we'll get through those. Okay.
So Draft 4 and Draft 6, Ben mentioned.
Would you state your name and title on this, too?
Sorry. My name's Nathan Auk. I'm the Early College and STEM Education Specialist here at the Utah State Board of Education. And so I've been working on this process the last year. So Draft 4 is, as Ben mentioned, the currently approved draft. Draft 6, Board Member Davis will speak more about shortly. There's the next attachment is the public comment outcomes. There's a number of the public comments that were issued. Next up is the Access Memo. This is a memo written by the Access Committee in support of the Draft 4 of the current board rule. There is a memo from Sherry Sorensen from Granite School District in support of Draft 4 of the current rule, and Granite also included their equity report, which is referenced within that memorandum. Next up is the early college coursework recommendations. These are both the framework that were used to create the priorities and the priorities that the board adopted in the spring of 2017 that have been the kind of lens through which we've done all of the changes within the board rule to this point. And then next up is the handout that Director of Teaching and Learning Jennifer Thronson just passed out, which is the background information. This handout or sheet speaks to the urgency of a change in current board rule as soon as able, offering some statistics connected to current statewide discrepancies between accelerated populations and LEA populations as well as state populations. The next attachment is the AP comparison. And what that attachment is the projections in funding mechanisms that include both Draft 4 and Draft 6. And I want to specify where you can find each of those. The AP comparison tab on that document shows how current funding mechanisms relate to Draft 4. And then if you go to the 30% tab, which is within this Draft 6 amendments that Board Member Davis will talk about, you can see how that draft would affect allocation mechanisms. So we've also included, we worked with our data department to include a document called the AP significance document. And there was some kind of high-level statistics calculated in order to help you all understand the differences in advanced or accelerated populations and their LEA populations. So that AP significance document lists all LEAs throughout the state, and then a number of potential underrepresented groups that they could choose to focus on within their plan. And so you'll see this Z-test for significance, and what's prudent to understand is that any significance score over 2 represents a significant difference between the LEA's population and the accelerated population. And I've highlighted those within that document. And so as you move from left to right, you'll see a number of different potential underrepresented groups that are laid out. And then finally, there's the options document that goes through the 4 options that you've already discussed. And so going forward, I'm happy to answer any questions that I can help with. Thank you.
Okay, Ben, is you presenting anything else? Okay, Board Member Davis.
I move that the board pass R277-707 Draft 6 on final reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass R277-707 Draft 6 on second and final reading.
Just final reading.
Oh, final reading, on final reading. Discussion to the motion. Board Member Hansen.
I have talked to my school districts. They like it the way it is written now. They feel like it helps their students. if we're going to go to another draft, then I feel like we need to go back to our school districts and say, how is this going to affect it? How do you feel about this? To pass it on final reading without giving them an opportunity to give input, I feel like is not fair. I believe that what we passed is fair. I think it helps students. Like I said, I have talked to, after the public hearing, I was very concerned because we heard from one high school in a predominantly, in an area where they have very little economic, so I think it said 7% economically disadvantaged, 5% kids with disabilities. So they are not, they don't have a lot of underserved students. So I wanted to hear from the districts that had a lot of underserved students to see if they felt like it helped them. And so I went back to my districts. Sherry Sorensen's letter, by the way, is Granite School District's letter in favor. They are in favor of the rule as it is written. Salt Lake School District Superintendent wrote to me and told me that she is in favor. Salt Lake School District is in favor of the rule as it is written. GWAB School District wrote to me and told me that they believe it is more equitable for students as it is written. So I believe that some of these schools that are going to be losing money, I have every confidence those in more affluent areas will find the means to make up the difference. I have no fear that they will, and so I prefer draft 4.
Okay, Vice Chair Brittany, comments?
I would like to make an amendment on line 124 to say 50%, line 128 to 50%, or back to half, line 130 to be 50%. And then line 135 would also have to be half.
We have a proposed amendment to the motion. Is there a second? Seeing none, your proposed amendment dies. That sounds really terrible, doesn't it? Okay. Speaking to the original motion, Board Member Ellis.
I'm concerned about doing this here and would like to see if we're going to be amending it, that it go back to committee. But I also wanted to ask a clarifying question. If this were to pass and it changes, then it goes through the process all over, still has the public feedback period, can be requested to be a hearing again, correct? Okay. So that gives me some comfort. I just feel like we need to be as transparent with the public as possible. Thank you.
Okay, Board Member Jenny Earl.
I just want to speak in support of the changes that have been made for draft 6. So,
Board Member Janet Cannon.
Yes, there are two things that I particularly like about draft 6. One is that it raises the bar for students passing from the level of a 2 to the level of a 3, which is currently the pass rate for AP. I don't believe that it benefits us to lower the bar for students. I mean, we want these students and we want these teachers to meet what's the expectation, which is, I believe, a 3 to pass an AP exam. The second thing I like about this level 6 is that it takes the the report, and currently I think the funds can be directed elsewhere, or they're just at an LEA level. On line 201, it says the annual report will require an accounting of how the LEA funds were dispersed to the teacher level, so that we have some assurance that the money that is meant to go to these AP programs and to support the AP teachers are being tracked to the teacher level. And that's why I'm in favor of draft 6.
Okay. Board Member Jennifer Gravitt.
I want to speak in opposition to Draft 6. One of the things I really valued during the public comment, the public hearing, was when Nathan talked about we value speed, but we also value depth and rigor. And as a teacher myself, sometimes it's really hard to get kids to who lack confidence or who maybe aren't the typical student who takes an AP class or an honors class. Getting them to get in the class is so valuable. I have many students who will take an AP class knowing they will never take the test, but they come back and they say, you know what, I'm now going to go to college because I have had this in-depth experience, my confidence has grown. There is value in taking the class without the test. Yes, the test is great, it will get them college credit, but there is so much value in that experience of depth. So I really like the 50% of enrollment, and I also really like the 2 because it's still college prepared. If a student gets a 3, they get rewarded anyway, but a 2 shows that they are college ready. And so I prefer draft 4. Thank you.
Hey, before I go to the next, whoever's on the line, or you're wanting to, well, do you want to get in line? I'll put you down in the queue, but can you put it on mute or something? It's sounding a little bit like maybe my stomach that hasn't ate yet.
No, I'll put it on mute.
Okay, but you're in the queue. Thank you. Vice Chair Brittany Cummins. Well, there it is.
Without an amendment, I'm not in favor of draft 6. I do like some of the technical changes in draft 6. I think they are beneficial to clarifying some of the confusion that was in the rule. However, the substantive changes of the 50%, I am not in support of and will not be voting in favor of this.
Okay. Board Member Newell.
I'm in support of draft 4 as well, partly because of some of the allocations that were listed. But again, one of my biggest concerns is we're forgetting that we're here to teach, not just to process. And if we do not allow for some semblance of allowance for students that may be on the cusp and may not be quite as confident as mentioned before to jump into these courses, then we're going to be missing out, and they may not ever come back from that negative experience. So what my hope is that through going with draft 4 is these opportunities are existing there for the students. However, there's opportunities along the ways to vet what is really actually going on and to continue the communication with those students as far as how they are experiencing this process. Taking the test or not taking the test are 2 different things, but I believe that the access has to be there for these individuals, and I believe the LEAs have some responsibility there for the compensation balances there on the allocations.
Board Member Lear.
I'm really conflicted about the differences between draft 4 and 6, and so I have a couple of questions related to that. And I'm also very influenced by one of the districts that I represent supports draft 4, and I've been an AP teacher, so I know that there is it's kind of a culture of personality, that it's not always about money that builds programs. It's a teacher, and what I'd like to see is all this money go into those salaries, but that's not on the table. So let me ask one of the questions that I had, and to kind of get a sense if we're arguing over something symbolic or if it's real money. The difference between 30% and 50% for a larger high school would be how much money? Can you give me a guesstimate or something that's, and it may be very deep in the data that I haven't gotten into.
Okay.
So
Need your
I
name
can.
and, name and title again so we all know.
Nathan.
Okay.
Sorry, yeah, totally. Nathan Ock, early college and STEM education specialist. So what I can speak to is the LEA percentage differences, and the challenge with speaking to the difference in high school allocation mechanisms is that different LEAs allocate in different ways, and so some LEAs take their allocation and they give it to schools based on the number of students that got a 3 on the test in the same way that the state gives it currently to those LEAs.
So let me just make sure I understand what you're saying. It's reallocated even once
That's
it goes
right.
to the LEA.
That's
Okay.
right.
All right, so keep going.
So what I can say is that Draft 4's allocation mechanism with 50% enrollment, 50% AP test score of 2 or greater is a little more consistent with regards to who loses amounts of money and who gains amounts of money. And in that 50-50 circumstance, generally the bigger districts, and this is not true across the board, but the bigger districts are losing percentages. I think Davis and Alpine are the two that lose the most amount of money in that original allocation, and it's on in the mid-teens percentage losses. So their allocation, Alpine's, for example, loses just over 13%, I believe, and then Davis is 18 if it's...
So that's $40,000.
Oh, it's 15, okay. And so with Draft 6, it's less predictable. There is not a consistent kind of winner and loser circumstance as consistent, and so it's hard to, like, with the short time that we've had with Draft 6, it's hard to, without doing some statistical analysis, it's hard to know the answer to your question.
Okay.
But if you take those two districts, their percentage loss, Alpine and Davis, in the Draft 6 is less than in Draft 4.
Mid-teens. And so I had just
Okay,
two short
follow-up.
follow-up comments. One's a question, one's a comment. So another concern I have is that we're changing two variables in Draft 6 at one time. 30%, we're changing it 50% to 30%, and we're also changing the 3 to the passing score from a 2 to a 3, or 3 to a 2. And, or no.
2 to a 3.
2 to a 3. It's currently a 2?
3. In draft 4, it's a 2, it's currently a 3.
Right. And so it would go from a 3 in current practice to the 2 in Draft 4, back to the 3 in Draft 6. And I feel like we might be able to accomplish, it might be a better indicator or information for us if we didn't change both those factors at once. And that's just a thought, a concern I have. And the last question I have is our back up against the wall? Do we need this decision today? Could it wait till August so that we could explore the possibilities more? I know that money has to go out to the schools so they can then divvy it up again, but how is it, are we absolutely at the decision point?
And I'm going to speak to this one. Jennifer Thronson, Director of Teaching and Learning. I was on the initial group that this got charged by the board in 2016, and so it is 2019 that we are in this space. So in terms of urgency, it has taken us 2.5 years to be here. If we don't have a draft that gets approved and put out for 60-day review, or at least the 30 days to 60, it will be another school year before we do any changes in the equitable access to the program. What you can decide, of course, what that means for you, but we have been working on this for a few years now, so I personally have an urgency. I'm going to be transparent with you, but it just means another year that we wait to change the protocol.
To change the formulas?
To make sure we get it right. That's totally understandable at the same level. But I think we could also have the opportunity to get to what can we be with okay now and come back if needed for technical changes. I think there's some great recommendations of clarifying the reporting pieces that comes in Draft 6 that makes sense. That could, something we can do programmatically with or without changes in the rule. but there are opportunities for technical changes later. The funding mechanism is a piece we definitely would need to figure it out in the short term.
Thank you.
Was Scott in or Laura? Oh.
Scott Nielsen.
Scott. Oh, yes, Scott Nielsen. Are you on? Thanks.
Yes, I am. I just I need a little bit of clarification. Like Carol, I've taught AP courses for years, and one of the things that I've found is I get on average between 28 and 30 students that enroll in the course, and then when they initially enroll, they discovered, well, hey, this is a rigorous course, and they decide they don't want to do it. So I end up on average from 30 or so down to about between 18 and 22 at the end of the school year. Is that taken into, that's my main concern, is that taken into account? Because our school is getting appropriated funds based on the initial 30 students or on the final amount of students that are still in the classroom at the end of the school year? Could someone answer that question for me?
Okay.
Based on our draft.
Someone, staff, who wants to answer that question?
Nathan Ock, Early College and STEM Education Specialist. So there's a couple of variables that come into play in this question. The first is that the College Board, who oversees advanced placement classes and testing, is changing the timing for when test fees are due and will be imposing a penalty on anyone who asks for to be able to take a test in the spring beyond a date in November. And so what they're hoping this does to programs across the country, and this isn't just in Utah, this is nationally, is that it creates buy-in for students that will be involved in those courses so that the attrition that the board member just spoke of is limited. With regards to how we are making decisions about what enrollment means, what we have done for the projections is course taking, and so Kristen Campbell has helped us with the data in understanding what those numbers look like, and she has mentioned that right now there needs to be some work done in it, but ultimately the numbers of the projections are based on enrollments for course taking, not test taking.
Was it courses with a specific date?
And to add to that,
Okay,
Scott,
so
we'd most likely use.
what you're saying is the schools,
Sorry, Scott,
ahead.
go ahead. Do your follow-up.
the schools are getting money. They're getting money based upon enrollees at any given time, and then they're not taking into account when those students all of a sudden in January or after even first term at the 1st of November are no longer in the course. And see, that's my problem. So I would strongly speak in favor of draft 6 at this moment. That's all I have.
Okay. Board Member Belknap.
Thank you, Chair. Just for clarity, if we do nothing today, it goes back to the old way of districts getting money by the number of students who complete at a 3. That's where it goes back to. Yeah, 100% goes back to there. So I do not like to be rushed, and that's the worst case scenario that could happen if we don't move forward today. However, I appreciated Carol's comment that should we be doing it all at once? And so I would ask the sponsor if she'd be willing to maybe break these out into sections. And I do have a question on the table, not just all these comments. The question on the table actually probably will go to Linda, but Chair, I'll let you do it. The comment from Salt Lake School District that they like draft 4, does that mean it came from, because we started, there's the original where the money all would come by students who complete at a 3. Then there was the next draft that came that it would be that the one that was enrolled was not enrolled, was 100% by enrollment. Now then draft 4 is 50-50. So my question to the table is, when
districts were saying they like draft 4 better, were they saying they like draft 4 better than the old way, which was by completion, or by the 100% enrollment? So that's my question on the table when districts were making comments. I don't know.
Well, and that is a really odd question, because now we're going to have you're going to put everyone that give input on draft 4, you're going to say, well, how do you turn back the clock and say, when you made those statements or pass that on to the board, what were you comparing it to, instead of as this draft 4 was emerging and becoming real? I mean, we voted on it.
I
and
guess
put it
more than
out there.
anything, were they comparing it to 4 to 6? Or 4 to something before that? And so that, because
I
that's kind
understand,
of what's
so-
on the table today.
But they're not
so.
here to answer every one. And
It's
and
okay, I just want people to think about that, how about?
Yeah.
Maybe that I don't need an answer, I just want people
I'm
to
just saying,
think about
for
it.
staff to try to get your answer, I think it would be very difficult to get. But everyone that's voting, that votes on the different things here, probably has a separate answer to everyone else. I want to keep everyone in the queue here moving forward. Board Member Scott Hansen.
Thank you. I'm here to speak in favor of Rev 6. First, I wanted to point out that we did have a public hearing on this. All the districts had equal opportunity to come and speak with us. We didn't hear from very many of the districts. I was a bit disappointed in that. The districts we did hear from did have successful programs going, and they spoke about those programs being at what they considered to be capacity, where they had multiple sections of classes, and the AP teachers were teaching as many sections as they could, some of them even giving up their prep time to teach their AP classes. So they saw what's been proposed in 4 as being something that would be very disruptive to programs that were already continuing. Another thing I'd like to point out is the law that we're trying to implement with this rule is 53F-2-408. And just one portion of it, I'm reading paragraph 5. A school district or charter school should use money distributed under this section to enhance the academic growth of students whose academic achievement is accelerated. So the focus of the law, the code, is to look at all accelerated students. We've added an access portion here from the board, and I think that that's something we should do. But I'm a bit concerned about going straight to 50-50 when we have these programs that are already moving. I think something like what's proposed is the 70-30 would be less disruptive to programs that are moving now, and we could tweak those numbers in the future after. We don't want to have a big step here in the first year. I think that to phase this in, that would be a more reasonable approach. Also, I think that the reporting requirements that are included and the reference to all accelerated students that are included in draft 6 are something that should be in this rule when we issue it. So I'm speaking in favor of draft 6.
Okay. All right. We've had a lot of people in the queue. We have a few more. Board Member Davis, this is your second time speaking to the...
Me to wait?
No. Okay. Board Member Earl, did you want to speak to this? This is,
Okay.
this is speaking to
Yeah, just a couple
draft
things.
6.
I think, I agree with what Scott said. I think that we need, I did hear from a few of my districts, and they were concerned about the change. And they, too, have some active programs, AP programs. So 6 changes one variable, not 2. It doesn't change both, it changes one. And leaving it at a 3 is what is currently in the standard, right? I mean, that's currently what the practice is, what's been. So it is the single variable then. 4 changes 2, but 6 changes just the 1. And I do think that's an important change. I think that these are accelerated students. They should be in the program because they've either consulted with the counselor or they've consulted with their parents. Anyways, I just continue to speak in favor of 6 and the idea that we have only one variable in 6.
Board Member Davis.
Just to address a couple of the concerns, I heard Board Member Grava and Board Member Newell mention the beauty of being able to take the AP course without the pressure of the test or having the focus on the test. And I did contact 2 AP teachers and ask about that scenario, and they currently use concurrent enrollment for those students. So if students want the exposure to the content and take the AP exam, not take the AP exam, they go through the whole class, they don't take the exam, but instead they get concurrent enrollment credit. Now, Nathan had said that may change coming up because now in coming years, now they're going to have to register for the AP exam in November. So even if we pass draft 6, we may need to revisit that a little bit in the next year or two to adjust. And all of these things, actually, we may have to revisit to adjust, no matter if we stay status quo today and fund solely on test scores or vote for draft 4 or vote for draft 6. As far as the allocation, Carol, that you mentioned, we do have, when it comes to the allocation disbursement, we have a line in draft 6 that does ask LEAs to report on the money getting to the teacher level so that we can make sure the money gets to the end of the row, which was also public input and a concern. Another concern that I've heard just kind of across the board is, and how fitting that these great students came and spoke today, right? So we have data. We see that there are underrepresented populations and non-underrepresented populations, and the data is discrepant. And do we need to take a step into this space of encouraging more underrepresented populations accessing accelerated programs? Our Access Committee would say yes. Several of our public input folks would say yes. I would say yes. I hope we don't wait another year. I hope we don't send back and back and back. I hope we get started on something. But as I listened to other voices of public input, I don't think people are ready to do a 50-50. So taking a step to the 30%, keeping the 3 as a status quo, knowing we can change these things later if we need to, at least steps us into the space while trying to mitigate some of the concerns with some of these other fixes in the rule language. And so I guess that's where I'm going to leave it. I'm obviously in favor of draft 6. I felt like it was really a collaborative. I contacted several people just to pick brains and try to figure out. And if I didn't contact all of you, I apologize. I kind of just hit who was showing up on my phone. But I'm not saying it's perfect. Draft 4 isn't perfect either, and neither is the status quo. But draft 6 sort of is in the middle, and it is a step forward, in my opinion.
Superintendent Dixon.
Thank you, Chair Huntsman. I try not to weigh in, as you know, on these kinds of things, but first, I want to say that I'm really proud that this board is voted to take this on as a strategy in terms of providing greater access to underrepresented students in upper level courses so that they're better prepared for college. So thank you to the board for taking this on. Second, in the conversations that I've had with some of you and listening to teachers, we have some wraparound work to do. So regardless of what version you pass, what has come to light for me is the mindset that we still need to work on in the field. And I think we have so many hardworking, well-meaning teachers that are doing incredible things. You heard the kids talk about it today. But when I hear teachers talk about those kids, we have a lot of work to do. When I hear teachers say, my classes are full and I'm the only one that can teach AP, nobody else really can teach it in the school but me, we have work to do. And there are a lot of ideas floating out there. When I hear a teacher say, you know, one of my colleagues doesn't get any AP money, they teach an AP class, but it's in this category and our principal hasn't given them any money, we have work to do. When I hear that a school, the district is holding the money back and not allocating it according to what the teachers need, we have work to do. So to Board Member Davis's point about what is our role in that space, remember, it's leadership and providing resources and policy levers. So you're working on that policy lever today, but I don't want us to lose sight of the bigger work, and that's around the mindset and helping people understand how they can use resources more effectively and some strategies that we can use to ensure more students. I'm one of those students who wanted to take AP and had a counselor tell me I couldn't. So, it's personal to me, and there are a lot of students who don't have advocates for them out there that I'm sure would like to take it. So again, when we hear a teacher say all the students are enrolled that want to take the class, we don't know that. So we have work to do, and we have amazing teachers doing hard things and doing really well, but we could do better. So thank you, board, for taking this on.
Board Member Linda Hansen.
I wish that you could have been there. Jennifer and I were there, right? When they gave, 2.5 years ago, when they gave the report on how dismal things were. And they got done doing the report and they said, "This is our report." And I was so shocked. But I'll tell you, the thing that came out of my mouth was, what are we going to do about it? And so Jennifer's been on this 2.5-year journey to answer my question. If you talk to Sean, Sean will tell you that a lot of kids don't have access. And I will tell you that in college, I took a course on access. I went into the course thinking that I didn't believe that people with disabilities, minorities, all of those people didn't have as much access as I had. But I found out I was wrong. There are inherent issues with access. We think everybody has the same amount of access that we do, but they don't. They don't have the funding. They don't even know about AP classes. They just don't have it. So, I know Jennifer's not been sitting around for 2 years. She's taken this out. They've had committees, they've had parents, they've had teachers, they have had everybody give input, and this is what they've brought back. And yes, there are losers. There are funding losers. There are a few districts that are going to lose money. But you know what? Look at all of those kids who are going to have access, who did not have access before if we pass draft 4. And that is what my districts are saying. Those districts that I serve that have many, many, many underserved kids say this is going to make a huge difference for those underserved kids. And I know that it will. And Jennifer, thank you. Thank you for working on my question.
Board Member Lear.
I've spoken already, so I didn't have
Oh,
one.
sorry.
Oh, sorry, there I'm on.
Oh.
Mark?
No, I
hang
just
on
have
one
one short question. I was going to ask Jennifer and Nathan why you picked 50%, why you went dramatically up to half as opposed to something like 30% or 40%. And you're the experts in this field. I've dabbled in it. I know a little bit about it, but I'd like to know why you feel like, and just is a brief response, because I think people have pretty much formulated their opinions, but I'd like to know how strong you feel about the 50%, how strongly you feel about moving from a 3 to a 2, keeping it a 3, not moving to a 2. Or vice versa, I'm sorry, moving to a 2 from the 3 that's been in place for a long time, and just your opinion about it.
Are we okay to speak? All right.
Yes, please speak to it.
I'll let you speak first.
Oh, I'm supposed to say that to the chair, so thank you for making that transition.
Trying to learn.
Yeah, so Nathan Auck, early college and STEM education specialist. The first draft that was approved by the board was draft 3. And in that draft, there was a 100%, a shift from 100% test scores of 3 or greater to 100% enrollment. And so the initial version that came out of the committee work was totally based on enrollment. And then that draft 3 was reevaluated under committee, and several board members suggested that a 50-50 allocation mechanism would be a compromise between the original 100% based on a test score of 3 or greater and 100% enrollment. And the reason that the test score went down to a 2 was based on committee recommendations for reporting. And so within that reporting space, the conversations that we had and got feedback from across the state was related to the success of an AP program doesn't end just based on the students that got those test scores. That the students that demonstrated college readiness also demonstrated that there was value in their experiences within that program.
Yeah, and I would just quickly add to that. The experience is sufficient. Whether I earn college credit or not, I still experience the academic rigor, conversations, text discussions in an AP course, whether I actually earn the college credit or not. So I took AP Spanish in high school. Do I speak Spanish today? No. Do I still value the language, the culture, and the people? Absolutely. Did I take the AP exam? No, but I took AP Spanish. And so there's still value in the coursework for students, whether they pass an assessment or not. And 2, gives you the opportunity to still value the academic rigor that comes with this course. So that's where the 2 conversation came from.
Okay. Board members, in the interest of time, I'm sure there's a couple more board members I think that wanted to speak to this. One being Scott, and we've been hearing both sides of the issue. But I'm gonna call on you here in a sec. But we're lobbying, and so if there's something new, I'd sure like to learn as a board member that might sway my vote. But I'm not learning anything new after reading both sides and those different arguments. So I'm seeking more information if there's something else that hasn't been presented just as a board member. But Scott, you wanted to speak?
Yeah,
here's your
I
chance.
moved the previous question.
Okay. We're going to end debate. We're going to vote on it. All those in this has been. Oh, was it second? Yeah. Oh, I thought I heard a second on this side. No, but second, sorry. I thought I heard a second. I apologize.
I didn't, so sorry.
Okay, Cindy, did you have something before I call on this? What's that?
Questions have already been called.
The question's been called, but is this regarding more of this or for clarity on what the? Okay, I'm gonna allow it because just one sec, Scott. Cindy, you have a question?
Yeah, just for clarity, Board Member Hansen's question resonates with me when you look at the data and what are we going to do about it? And what we're doing about it, the big policy lever that Superintendent Dixon has mentioned, a policy lever, is that all of these schools, every school can lose funding if they do not increase enrollment of underrepresented populations. This is in Draft 4 and this is in Draft 6. It was untouched in Draft 6. Draft 6 just takes a little bit less of a step, but it also clarifies other policy issues that were concerns of public input. But that lever is totally intact.
Okay, we're going to end debate. It's been called to question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
We haven't. Scott, you're an aye. I presume you would. You made the motion. Okay, we ended debate. The motion before we're going to vote on this. The motion before the board is to approve R277-707 draft 6 on final reading. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Will the ayes raise your hand to be recognized? This is 6. Voting on, just to make sure. Draft 6.
Yeah,
Okay,
Scott
board,
Wilson is an aye.
Scott, you're an aye. Board Member Lear? So that's Scott Nelson. Board Member Lear, Board Member Scott Hansen, Board Member Davis, Board Member Belknap, Board Member Earl, Board Member Lisa Cummins, Board Member Ellis, Board Member Cannon.
Board Member Bolter is an aye.
Board Member Bolter. That's,
Yes,
and that
I'm an
wasn't,
aye.
and the noes are Board Member Hansen, Board Member Gravitt, Board Member Newell, Vice Chair Brittany Cummins, Mark Huntsman. Motion passes. Okay. We don't have any unfinished business on this now. What's that? What? Okay, yeah. Hey, we want to thank you for moving this forward and hearing and all the support, so thank you. We are a little bit behind schedule. Board members, at this time, we're going to break first for a photo and then to lunch.
If it's not raining, or Barbara can tell, are we going outside?
Just right up here in the courtyard.
So we're going to quickly, if we could just exit from here to the courtyard.